And joining us now to discuss yesterday's meeting between the two officials is Avi Melamed, former Israeli intelligence official and senior official on Arab affairs. Good morning, Avi. So what are some possible ways that Israel and the U.S. could potentially work together to counter Iran's aggression in the region and its nuclear ambitions?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Recently, the weakening of the Iranian-backed axis of resistance is one good step in that direction, particularly when we are talking about the weakening of Hezbollah and Hamas, two major members of this axis. However, we should remember that those members still continue to maintain some military capacities, and as long as they will be able to continue to dictate the trajectory of the conflict as they have been doing negatively for many years, you can't really expect any a positive breakthrough. So it seems like that there is going to be a combination of both pressure on Iran as well on the governments, the relevant governments, like in Lebanon, for example, and also in the context of the Palestinian, by the United States administration, because one of the major challenges is to make sure that those terror entities, the semi-state entities, will not be able to continue to dictate their trajectory. And I would expect the growing challenges for the Mullah regime as long as they are not willing to cooperate with the international community regarding its nuclear project.
Okay, Avi, let me ask you something that really stood out yesterday when Rubio met with Netanyahu. So he said Hamas must be eliminated. I'm just wondering, does this comment hurt the stability of the current ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and anything else you want to give us your thoughts on?
Well, I will say a couple of things. Hamas is not going to disappear. We'll leave rhetoric aside. The big question here is, in the end of the day, again, whether Hamas will be able to continue to dictate its radical agenda. The significance of Trump's administration, Trump's statement, is that for the first time, it's basically forcing the Arab world to come forward with some kind of like a program or an action plan to deal with the challenge of Gaza. There are many obstacles in this, what seems to be like the upcoming Arab program. Basically, this Arab program talks about, among other things, about that Hamas will step down. Let's assume that Hamas is stepping down from the rule in Gaza Strip, and let's assume that he is willing to do that, which is a big question. The bigger question is whether Hamas is going to give us his arm, his weapon. And this is something that I should be very skeptic about. We should remember the Palestinian president himself, Mahmoud Abbas, said, "I'm not willing to take control as long as there is other factor that holds weapon." In other words, he basically says Hamas must give in its weapon to the Palestinian Authority. I wonder if that could happen, given to the past experience between the two. I'm very skeptic about it.
Okay, so Netanyahu said Israel finished the job against Iran. Is your response to that similar to what you said now?
Well, again, putting aside the statements and the rhetoric, Iran is not it's not going to disappear. Hamas is not going to disappear. The challenges remain the challenges. In the end of the day, there is a need to a very pragmatic approach that will actually addresses the challenges at site. When we talked about Iran, the major issue, of course, is the story of the nuclear project of the Iranian regime. Roughly speaking, I would say that given the fact that the axis of resistance have been significantly weakened, Iran deterrence image has been significantly neutralized or compromised, the increasing enormous challenges within Iran and the toughening sanctions of Trump administration, they put currently and in the foreseeable future the Mullah regime in front of what I think is their biggest challenge ever for their endurance. And that has to be, to a large extent, also connected to the story of their vision regarding the nuclear project. And I think that what the Mullah regime is trying to do right now, understanding that he's facing such an enormous challenge, is trying to use the card of the threats of the nuclear project, the military nuclear project, as a way to kind of like counter or balance the upcoming challenges, the upcoming pressure that he is experiencing. I think this is a very delicate game, but I think the bottom line of that is that we should remember that 2025 is going to be apparently a year where the Mullah regime likely to experience its unprecedented challenge for its endurance.
Yeah, can you just talk to us a little bit more about what you're just saying now about the response of Iran and others? Do you think this increased pressure is going to potentially deepen alliances between Iran, China, Russia? Your thoughts?
Yes, it's very likely that will happen. But yet again, we have to remember that on the other hand, that Trump is now leading an interesting process trying to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Saudi Arabia is going to host a summit or sort of a summit in Saudi Arabia between the United States and Russia, aims to basically end the war. I would expect that in return for Trump's support, let's put it this way, to end the war, where he's basically siding with Putin, I would expect that Putin understand that one of the things that he has to pay in with, sort of speaking, is in the context of the relation with Iran. I don't see Putin lying on the fence to defend the Mullah regime. As for China, China is a very significant player as well. Its relationship with Iran is enormously significant because China imports huge amount of oil from Iran. Now with the toughening of the sanctioning by Trump administration, that of course presents some sort of a challenge to China. They will probably turn into the diplomatic channel, as they always do, to find a solution to that growing challenge. I think the bottom line, when you look around, I think that the one that will have to pay with hard currency, sort of speaking, in the end of the day, will have to be the Mullah regime itself.
And another topic that was mentioned as well is, can you give us your thoughts on the implications of Trump's relocation proposal for Gaza?
The significance of Trump administration, without judging its viability and so on, the significance is that for the first time it actually stirred the pot. It's basically bringing a new dynamic to the very old and ineffective dynamic that we used to know in the past. That dynamic basically manifested in the fact that every round with Gaza Strip, every round of violence that Hamas was initiating, the Arab world went back to the very safe, comfortable hub of rhetoric and slogan and stuff like that, which was totally not effective and resulted nothing but further escalation. Now comes Trump, and he's basically totally changing the game rules, sort of speaking. And what you see right now in the last couple of days, you could see Arab leaders that are running around trying to come forward with some sort of like a counter proposal to Trump, because the message of Trump is that I'm not going to take any more the old rhetoric. We're done with that. We've been there, done that. We want to see something much more tangible. Right now on the table, there is some sort of like an Egyptian brewing program. This weekend is supposed to be a mini summit of major Arab states, including Egypt. According to that program, apparently the Gulf states are going to pitch in and to put the money needed for the rehabilitation of Gaza. And also, according to that proposal, Hamas is supposed to step down, which I referred to earlier, basically expressing a lot of skepticism. What does exactly mean stepping down? Just the same, the importance of Trump's statement, as I said before, is the fact that for the first time for a couple of decades, I have to emphasize that, we are looking at something that is different. It's a new ball game, and as for itself, it is something positive. And I think that this is something that we should recognize and acknowledge.
All right, Avi, always great to speak with you. Thanks for your time today.
Of course, thank you for having me. Have a good day.